Southport killer Axel Rudakubana was today sentenced to life with a minimum of 52 years for the murder of 3 young girls during his monstrous attack on a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. The violence-obsessed 18-year-old cowardly refused to face his victims' families, remaining in his cell as the judge handed down his sentence. After being pulled from the dock twice while complaining he was ill, Mr. Justice Goose said it was highly likely Rudakubana will never be released from prison after murdering B.B. King, 6, Elsie Stancombe, 7, and Alice de Silva Aguiar, 9, and attempting to murder 10 others. Shortly before the verdict was handed down, the parents of the murdered girls told how they were no longer living following their tragic deaths, spending every day in a state of permanent numbness. Disturbing footage played in court earlier today shows the fiend skulking silently in the back seat of a taxi on the way to the dance class. His cold, demonic eyes just visible over a blue face mask. He is then seen calmly walking towards the Heart Space building where the dance class was being held. After finding the main door was closed, he enters through another door and up the stairs. Witnesses described screams coming from inside the building within 30 seconds as the deranged teenager began targeting the girls inside. Sentencing Rudakubana this afternoon, Mr. Justice Goose said, "Many will describe what he did as evil. Who could dispute it? In any view, this was the most extreme, shocking, and serious crime. I'm satisfied that had he been able to, he would have killed each and every child, all 26 of them, and any adults who got in the way. It's only because some managed to escape that prevented many more from being murdered." The judge said he was unable to give Rudakubana a whole life tariff because he was days away from his 18th birthday when he carried out the atrocity. The killer would have to go before the parole board before he is ever released. He received 13 life sentences. He was also given a 12-year jail sentence for production of ricin, which an expert said could have killed 12,500 people with more purification, and 18-month sentences for possession of the knife. An Al-Qaeda manual that Rudakubana's sentence is one of the highest minimum custody terms on record and is also thought to be the longest imposed on a killer of his age. Although Rudakubana's actions did not meet the statutory definition of terrorism, Mr. Justice Goose said, "In my judgment, his culpability for this extreme violence is equivalent to that of terrorist murders, whatever his motives." Rudakubana admitted, on Monday this week, the attempted murder of 8 other children, who cannot be named for legal reasons, as well as class instructor Leon Lucas and businessman John Hayes, that he further pleaded guilty to possession of a knife on the day of the attack, production of a biological toxin, ricin, on or before July 29th, and possession of information likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism. MPs and leaders across the political divide have been reacting to the news of Rudakubana's sentencing this afternoon. Sir Keir Starmer reached out to survivors and those affected by the atrocity in Southport, saying, "We stand with you in your grief." Turning to Rudakubana's life sentence, he said, "This vile offender will likely never be released." The Prime Minister added in a statement on X, "After one of the most harrowing moments in our country's history, we owe it to these innocent young girls and all those affected to deliver the change that they deserve." Meanwhile, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said she will explore changing the law so teenagers can receive whole life orders. Reform leader Nigel Farage also reacted to the sentencing. He wrote on X, "The cover-up is over. The truth is that all of our authorities have failed. I have no confidence that any lessons will be learned until we have leadership that is strong and unafraid." Family members were given the option to leave court at today's sentencing hearing ahead of CCTV being played, but all remained in the court, though some left as details of pathological evidence began to be read out. Earlier during the hearing, they sat through horrific details about Rudakubana's sadism and utter lack of remorse, with the teenagers saying, "I'm glad they're dead" after being arrested. As the prosecution read their opening note, Rudakubana turned to a dock officer and said, "I'm not fine. I feel ill." He shouted repeatedly, "I need to speak to a paramedic. I feel ill. You're not giving me any support, Judge. I feel ill." When the judge tried to carry on with the case, Rudakubana exclaimed, "Don't continue. I can't remain quiet. I haven't eaten for 10 days. I feel ill. I'm not going to remain quiet." A family member shouted, "Coward," as Rudakubana left the dock after Mr. Justice Goose ordered officers to take him out of court. The prosecution then continued reading their opening, with the judge saying Rudakubana would be returned to court to receive his sentence. Rudakubana was removed from the dock for a second time this afternoon as the hearing resumed, after he began to shout. After sitting quietly for a short period with his head lowered, he shouted, "Judge, I feel really ill. I need to be seen by a paramedic." When there was no response, Rudakubana shouted, "Judge, judge, judge, I need to be seen by a paramedic." Mr. Justice Goose asked dock officers to remove Rudakubana, adding, "He has been seen by 2 teams of paramedics, both of whom agreed he is fit." The parents of the murdered and injured girls told of their enduring pain in victim impact statements read out to the court. Jenny Stancombe, mother of Elsie Stancombe, age 7, one of the 3 girls who died, told how her family had lost their best friend through an act of pure evil. Mrs. Stancombe continued in a statement read out by Prosecutor Deanna here, KC. "We are not going to stand here and list everything you have taken away from us because we refuse to give you the satisfaction of hearing it. We will not let you know anything about her because you don't deserve to know the extraordinary person she was. You know what you have done, and we hope the weight of that knowledge haunts you every day." The parents of another of the murdered girls, 9-year-old victim Alice Silva Aguiar, said, "Life without Alice is not living at all. It's a state of permanent numbness." The couple kept up hope while their daughter fought for her life over 14 hours of treatment in hospital. But once she lost her fight, we lost our lives. Sergio and Alexandra Aguiar said they cannot even bring themselves to see pictures or videos of their daughter. "Now, we are in constant pain," the couple said in a statement read by Ms. Here. The couple said they feel like they are stuck in a 5D horror movie and that the center of our universe has been taken, adding, "How can we ever smile if Alice is not there?" Reading her own victim impact statement to the court this afternoon, class instructor Ms. Lucas said, "As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot stay in my own home alone. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot go to work. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot walk down the street without holding my breath as I bypass a person and then glance back to see if they've attempted to stab me. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot enter a public place without considering how I will get out in the event of an emergency. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot give myself compassion or accept praise, as how can I live knowing I survived when children died?" Children who survived the attack also recalled the horror they went through. Turning to Rudakubana, one said, "I saw you in your green hoodie and face mask. The thing I remember about you is your eyes. You didn't look human, you look possessed." A second girl who suffered life-changing injuries told how she feared she was going to die because I was in so much pain and there was so much blood. The victim, who was 10 at the time and initially thought Rudakubana was a caretaker, said she still has nightmares 1 or twice a week and felt guilty wondering if there was anything she could have done to help the 3 girls who were murdered. Another girl, who was attacked while attending the dance, clashed with her sister and was stabbed in the arm and back, told how no sane person could do that, and addressing Rudakubana, added, "It's sickening what you did, going in there into a room full of defenseless children. Give me a reason for what you did. Arming yourself with a weapon and stabbing children. I hope you spend the rest of your life knowing that we think you're a coward." Earlier, Deanna here said Rudakubana had carried out a premeditated, planned knife attack upon multiple victims, principally young girls, intending to kill them, and inflicted injuries that were difficult to explain as anything other than sadistic in nature. Ms. Here said at today's hearing that while Rudakubana was being held in a custody suite after the killings, he told officers, "It's a good thing those children are dead. I'm so glad, so happy." In her opening of the case, Ms. Here told the court, 3 children were killed, 2 of whom suffered particularly horrific injuries which are difficult to explain as anything other than sadistic in nature, and the defendant attempted to kill 10 others, inflicting a number of stab wounds upon them, including to their backs as they tried to escape. Ms. Here told the court that images and documents were found on Rudakubana's devices, which demonstrated that he had a long-standing obsession with violence, killing, and genocide. Amongst those documents was a version of the Al-Qaeda training manual, which provides instruction on how to commit acts of terror, including with a knife and with poisons, including ricin. She added that a number of weapons were also recovered in searches of his home, including the biological toxin ricin, which the defendant had produced in his bedroom. Ms. Here added, having researched atrocities committed by others, The evidence suggests that he set out to emulate them on the July 29th. There is no evidence that he ascribed to any particular political or religious ideology. He wasn't fighting for a cause. His only purpose was to kill, and he targeted the youngest, most vulnerable in order to spread the greatest level of fear and outrage, which he succeeded in doing. Whilst under arrest at the police station after the incident, Axel Rudakubana was heard to say, "It's a good thing those children are dead. I'm so glad. So happy." The court also heard details of how Rudakubana called Childline asking, "What should I do if I want to kill somebody?" During the call on October 4th, 2019, he explained that he hated someone at school who bullied him. He felt angry and wanted to kill them, Ms. Here said. She added, "He said he had taken a knife to school but would only use it if the person really annoyed him." As a result, a referral was made to the police, who visited the defendant. He confirmed that he had taken a knife to school and added that he thought he would use it if he became angry. The school was also informed. By this time, the defendant had been temporarily excluded. When he admitted taking a knife to school on about 10 previous occasions, his exclusion was made permanent. Ms. Here revealed Rudakubana was referred to the Multi-Agency Safeguard Hub, MASH, and the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, CMHS, then enrolled at a pupil referral unit on October 17 that the barrister went on. During his admission meeting, he was asked why he had taken a knife to school. He replied, "To use it." On the December 11th, 2019, the defendant booked a taxi to take him to the Range High School. He had with him a hockey stick which he used to attack another pupil. When the police were called, a kitchen knife was found in his backpack. He was subsequently charged with and pleaded guilty to assault occasioning actual bodily harm, possession of an offensive weapon, and possession of a bladed article. A referral order was imposed. Describing what happened at the Heart Space, Ms. Here said dance teachers Leanne Lucas and Heidi Little were with children who were gathered around tables making bracelets, singing along to Taylor Swift songs. Rudakubana had taken a taxi from his family home in Banks, 5 miles from Southport. He did not speak during the journey and left without paying, prompting the driver to follow him asking for payment. Colin Perry, the owner of a neighboring garage, told Rudakubana he needed to pay, but the defendant's response was, "What are you going to do about it?" Ms. Here said. Rudakubana went up the stairs within the Heart Space building. Ms. Here went on. Within 30 seconds, screaming could be heard coming from within, followed very shortly afterwards by children fleeing the building. The prosecutor gave details of a statement from Ms. Lucas, saying she had seen Rudakubana outside in a green hoodie and mask as she opened a window due to it being a hot day. Ms. Lucas then described how he walked into the upstairs room where the dance class was happening. Ms. Here said, without saying a word, he grabbed the child nearest to him from behind and put his arm around her. She had been at a table making a bracelet. Then he moved to a second child, then a third. He moved quickly through the room without saying anything. It was only when Ms. Lucas, reached her and she felt the knife that she realized he was armed and stabbing the children. She recalls seeing a flash of the defendant's green top as he chased her. She was frightened they wouldn't be able to get out quickly enough. She told the children, "Run away, run away." The court then heard evidence from John Hayes, a businessman based in neighboring premises within the Heart Space building, that he heard screaming and went out of his office to be confronted by Rudakubana on the landing, holding a knife while standing over the body of one of the girls, BB King. Ms. Here said Mr. Hayes backed away, followed by Rudakubana. Ms. Here said he followed him into his office. The defendant swiped at him. Mr. Hayes tried to grab the knife, and the defendant stabbed him in the leg. That Mr. Hayes then collapsed. Outside, window cleaners Marcin Tijan and Joel Verite saw children running and a woman covered in blood. That Mr. Verite picked up Alice de Silva Aguiar and took her to Mr. Tijan, who tried to revive her before emergency services could arrive. At R. Verite went inside Heart Space to try to rescue children, but retreated when he saw the defendant holding a large knife. The court heard that. A number of people dialed 999, and the first police to attend at 11:57 a.m. were Sergeant Gregory Gillespie and Sergeant Luke Holden, who was armed with a taser. Ms. Here said, at the top of the stairs, they saw the defendant. He was standing over the body of BB King, who had visible stab injuries, and was holding a large bladed knife. Rudakubana was told to drop the knife, and he did so. Ms. Here added, the officers moved into the room where the dance class was being held and found the body of Elsie at Stancombe on the floor. The court was shown a series of CCTV footage showing the defendant arriving and children fleeing. In one clip, an 8-year-old girl who survived could be seen being pulled back inside by Rudakubana. A further clip showed police finding one child and dance teacher, Ms. Little, crying in the toilet. The police officer tells Ms. Little, "Listen, listen, listen, you're safe." Asked whether police could have said more about Rudakubana following the 17-year-old's arrest and before a judge permitted the media to identify him, Merseyside Chief Constable Serena Kennedy said she genuinely didn't think they could because of the constraints that we were under. Following false rumors that the attacker was a Muslim asylum seeker, police took the unusual step of saying the name circulating on social media was false and revealing that the suspect was in fact born in Cardiff. However, it was not enough to prevent days of rioting which blighted first Southport and then towns and cities across England. This was a child that was in custody, which obviously dictates the amount of what information that we can share, and also he was subject of criminal proceedings, she said. My overriding primary concern was getting justice for those little girls and for those that have been injured and traumatized by the events, and I certainly didn't want Merseyside police to say anything that would impact on that criminal justice process. Ms. Kennedy said she had announced that the suspect was born in Cardiff as soon as this was confirmed to her officers to try and reassure the communities and trying to dispel some of that disinformation and misinformation. Hitting out at the rioters, she said police absolutely would have facilitated peaceful protest from people unhappy with how such a dreadful attack could have happened. That was not peaceful protest. It was wanton thuggery. In relation to the decision not to reveal that deadly biological toxin ricin had been found at the address until Rudakubana was charged with possessing it on October 29th, the chief constable said she had to balance the criminal justice process with the risk of causing unnecessary fear. She stressed that there had never been any evidence that the ricin made by Rudakubana posed a wider threat. But she acknowledged that the case demonstrates why the Law Commission review into contempt of court rules was required. Asked how it felt to know that Rudakubana could potentially have been stopped at opportunities not been missed, she said, "It's just devastating to think that there are things that could have been done that could have prevented 3 little girls losing their lives and others being injured and traumatized. I think it's important that all of the agencies that have had contact with Rudakubana engage fully with the public inquiry to make sure that we can fully understand when the reviews were made, what was done about them, the decisions that were made, to make sure the learning can be taken forward in the future. I think that we owe that to all of the families, and we owe that to all of the victims." The chief constable said she could understand why the public will be shocked that Rudakubana could go on to commit such an atrocity after 3 referrals to counter-extremism program prevent doubt on the decision not to declare the Southport attack an act of terrorism. She insisted it hadn't made a difference to the investigation. But she said the attack showed there was a gap at this moment in time in terms of the definition of terrorism and backed the PM's promise to review the law. After the sentencing, Ms. Kennedy branded the killings a cowardly and vicious attack and said Rudakubana carried out sadistic acts of violence. Those girls, who ranged in age from 6 to 13, were the polar opposite of the calculating teenager who carried out the harrowing and atrocious premeditated attack, she said. The victims were enjoying a day of youthful innocence, untainted by the twisted and unhealthy fascination with violence that drove Axel Rudakubana to carry out the atrocities he had planned in the days leading up to the event. She added, "There is no evidence that he ascribed to any particular political or religious ideology. He wasn't fighting for a cause. His only purpose was to kill, and he targeted the youngest, most vulnerable in order to spread the greatest level of fear and outrage, which he succeeded in doing. These events have impacted and will continue to impact the victims and their lives every day forever. They won't be able to just switch off and move on. But I hope that knowing he is now convicted of the most horrendous crime and is now convicted for the most horrendous of crimes and is now in prison will bring some small amount of comfort." Ms. Kennedy added, "I would like to express my gratitude to the community of Southport who came together to support families following the attack, and then again when violent disorder brought chaos to the streets. A place where the community spirit has shone through at this dark time." And she pledged to participate fully in the public inquiry into the atrocity and ensure any learning and recommendations are implemented. Finally, I want to thank the victims and the families for the dignity and understanding they have shown since 29 July. I would also like to pay tribute to three little girls, Bibi, Elsie, and Alice, whose beautiful faces and names will be etched in the minds of people across Merseyside and the UK forever. Vicky Evans, Senior National Coordinator for Prevent and Pursue at Counterterrorism Policing, said, "The perpetrator has shown no signs of remorse. He has not explained the motivation of his actions. And we have found no evidence to date that explains why he chose to attack those children or that event. The absence of evidence of a motivation means that these acts have not met the legal definition of terrorism. But to be clear, that does not make the horrendous acts any less terrifying or terrorizing for those impacted and the whole community. In the same way, we must now consider how we work together in the future to tackle this challenge of individuals who are fixated with all types of extreme violence, both within and beyond the counterterrorism system." The perpetrator had contact with a range of services, including the Counterterrorism Prevent System. Following these attacks, we have worked rapidly with the Home Office to commission a review of this contact, and we welcome the announcement of a public inquiry which will examine all services' previous contact with him. The same determination that we put to the investigation is now being applied to examining how the range of agencies involved did not come together to effectively understand and identify and deal with the risk that he posed.